Welcome back to Lorehammer, a podcast where we talk about the finer intricacies of Warhammer. And on today's episode, we're going to go into what really pisses Angron off. And I'll tell you, it's a lot of different things. Joining me to talk about this, Christian. Yo, what's good, man?
Hey. Love talking about Angron, getting angry, just living in a perpetual state of rage.
Yeah, like sometimes you wish you could be him. Like the gladiator stuff's kind of fun, but other times it's mostly just shitty and painful, I think.
Yeah. Anyone that's been beaten by a drunk relative can tell you that being angry all the time is not the solution to your problems.
No, usually not. Usually not. We also got Jordan joining us with your rage-inducing background. Honestly, 40K is very serious, and that background's not taking this seriously.
Yeah, that was the point. Howdy, folks. Excited to be on another episode.
Yeah. You like Angron at all? You kind of know who he is, what he's about?
Oh, yeah. I think I've covered an episode or two of him with you guys. But yeah, I get the gist. He's like he's the sort of I feel like the embodiment of Khorne and the Primarchs, you know?
Yeah. And we also got back after a long time away, James. James from James Complaints.
I am Gene Stealer Jim, the Mister of Battle. Thank you for having me back. I'm here to challenge your assumptions, rewrite history, and cause division. So let's get to it.
He is the Rage Vader, nice. The Arc Rage Vader.
That's right.
We got a long episode ahead of us, so we'll just kind of skip all the formalities, go join the Patreon, come to join the Discord, all that kind of fun stuff. Big episode, lots to rage about, honestly. In this episode, we're going to do a quick recap over kind of what we learned about his origins in the Great Crusade, and then we're going to dive into the Horus Heresy, and it all starts with Istvan, and then Angron goes on his own little Shadow Crusade, and at the end is a transformation of sorts. It's pretty cool. I won't spoil it now, but it ends well for Angron. And then they kind of just go on a little mindless slaughter of the galaxy, kill a planet here, purge a sector there. That's what the Horus Heresy is all about, until you make your way to Terra. And I won't spoil how that one ends either. We'll get to that. And then finally, the Great Scouring of what happens after. Angron, yeah, there's a lot to him. It's one of those episodes where, lots of people everywhere think he's like one of the best written Primarchs, the most tragic, kind of the most maybe not relatable but understandable, if that makes sense. So lots to him.
Yeah, well, with that, let's go get into his origins and background and a bit of a recap. Angron's origins are rooted in cruelty and loss rather than triumph. Cast by fate unto the world of New Syria, he was found not by kings or scholars, but by slavers who forged their society around blood sport and domination. Though born a Primarch, Angron was chained, beaten, and forced into the gladiator pits, where survival meant slaughter and brotherhood was forged only through shared suffering. It was there that the butcher's nails were hammered into his skull, a device meant to strip away restraint and replace thought with pain and rage. Among fellow slaves, Angron became the leader not through ambition, but through defiance, fighting not for glory, but for the hope of dying free beside those he loved. When the Emperor finally came for him, Angron was torn from the last stand of his fellow gladiators and carried away against his will, leaving them to die alone. That moment, abandonment, masquerading as salvation, scarred Angron forever, shaping a Primarch whose life would be defined by fury, grief, and an unending hatred for a galaxy that had never offered him mercy.
Yeah, so let's dive into those beautiful implements of technology, the butcher's nails. They're crude, merciless, cortical implants hammered into the brain, designed not to enhance thought, but to punish it. They flood the mind with agony whenever calm, restraint, or reflection surface, and reward only rage, violence, and the taking of lives with fleeting relief. Originally a tool of Nasurian slavers to break gladiators into obedient killers, the nails became a constant scream inside Angron's skull, slowly eroding his sanity, his empathy, and his capacity for anything beyond fury. They did not make him strong, they made him desperate, chaining his soul to pain and turning every moment of existence into a choice between unbearable torment and slaughter.
Those are so fucking brutal. The way they describe it is just like hammering into his skull. Like you have to get through that adamantium bone he has, like, oh
yeah, that was one thing that I've always kind of wondered is like, these must be interesting technology for them to work on a Primarch.
Yeah, it's like Dark Age technology, and where other ones would get like one, Angron got many before he was finally like kind of subdued. So each one of those strands is a butcher's nail,
Yeah, and the other side of that too is that they're so complex and embedded into a system that Imperial science couldn't also take it out either.
They sort of became a symbiotic relationship with his brain.
Could it be, is it symbiosis if one just makes you suffer? That sounds like parasite to me.
Yeah, it's a parasitism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, let's get into the arrival of the Emperor. When the Emperor arrived on Nuceria, he did not come as a savior in Angron's eyes, but as yet another master demanding obedience. Angron was found upon the red sands of Desh Ilika Ridge, standing with his fellow gladiators in a doomed rebellion against their overlords, wounded, defiant, and ready to die beside the only family he had ever known. In a moment that would damn their bond forever, the Emperor tore Angron from the battlefield by force, teleporting him away, while his brothers and sisters were left to be slaughtered to the last. To the master of mankind, it was a calculated act of preservation. To Angron, it was betrayal beyond forgiveness, carried into the stars, screaming his hatred. Angron did not see a father or a god, only another tyrant who had stolen his death, broken his oath to die free, and replaced the chains of Nuceria with gilded ones that would bind him for the rest of his cursed existence.
So this, if I can jump in now, if now's a good time to start throwing some controversy in here. I know a lot of people think of Angron as a tragic figure, but I think that it's more of a response. This moment where he's rescued by the Emperor and he decides to be bitter about it is what makes him not a tragic character, but one of like a character degeneration. He's not wanting to, he's given an opportunity for a new beginning, and he decides that instead of that, he's going to sit in bitterness. And so even before the heresy, before the demonic influences, he's consumed by his own bitterness at the situation that he is in, and he doesn't choose to move in a positive direction. He only chooses to move in negative directions from there. And I think that isn't tragedy. That's, I guess maybe it's a form of tragedy, but it's more of a character degeneration story.
Yeah, maybe in like the more archaic version of tragedy, like tragedies, like in the Greek play sense, come from like a character flaw that leads to a bad outcome.
Yes, in that,
so like
form, yes, it's a tragedy.
Yes, like,
but I mean, when most people say tragedy in the vernacular, they don't mean like, oh, it's a crucial flaw in their personality, like Achilles. It's more like it's a sad story, is what most people mean. Like, oh, I feel bad for this person. Is
they deserve pity, or something happened to them kind of outside of their control.
Yeah, and I get like someone getting in a car accident.
Yeah. Because like even with the butcher's nail, which he has at this point, like I don't know, you could still choose to accept your lot in life. There's stories of people who are in all types of horrible situations who are the happiest people and kind of just accepted it. Or so if anyone has the willpower to do it, Primarch can kind of get over his bitterness or whatever. It is like to compare it to someone like let's compare it to Sanguinius, my favorite one. He's given some bad hands too. He's considered an outcast and a freak, and he's on an irradiated hellhole. But instead of that, he chooses to create art and create virtue out of the things he's given. Whereas Angron decides, I'm angry at everything that's happened to me, and I'm just going to live with that, and I'm going to make sure everyone else suffers too. That's the
that's maybe the embodiment of evil that he's embraced. And so even before the warp demons, he's got, let's say, another kind of demon whispering in his ear right from the beginning.
Yeah, I definitely actually lean towards that too. That like it's almost, and it's interesting because he looks so surface level. Oh, haha, the angry Primarch is named Angron, and rage is his thing. But really, his thing, like you said, is more bitterness and his choices rather than the things that are out of his control. Yes, the nails are out of his control. Yes, rage is out of his control. But he chooses what to be angry at, and
he chose to remain angry, right? Because anger is the response to his bitterness.
Yeah, and really the seed is bitterness, that he just won't let go of that initial interaction with the Imperium. All that being said, I mean, the Emperor is kind of silly for what he did to Angron. You know, how Angron chooses to respond on that, whatever. But the Emperor just snatching him away, letting the rest of his gladiators die to the last. There should be some accountability for that as well on the Emperor side.
Sure, but like, do you think Angron would be a happier dude if he if he would have brought all his gladiators with him? No,
he might not. He might not be as.
You would still be under another tyrant, which is his whole thing. Like, okay, now my brothers and sisters will revolt against this tyrant together.
Yeah, and that is true too. That's also a very key detail that's always missed about Angron, is like he's not well suited to the structure of the Imperium because his whole thing is anti-establishment, anti-authority. He has a little bit of a libertarian streak, if you will.
Gross.
So exchanging one tyrant for another in his eyes might still also cause him issue. They do talk about that too. I think another one that kind of fights with that is Korax, who also comes from like a slavery background. And he has to kind of contend with the ideas. Are we just changing one slaver for another? Obviously, I don't know if you, Mark, if you talked about it in the first episode with Angron, that his story is obviously based off of Spartacus. And his
honestly, it never came up.
Oh, really?
Surprisingly.
A whole episode without, yeah, he's very much shot for shot. Like his whole background is taken from Spartacus. And even like his homeworld, Neustria, is where Spartacus trained. So,
oh, okay, I didn't know that little detail.
Yeah, it's like quite on the nose, but
yeah, that one's so surface level. I brought up like, is it more like Rome or Cormora? They're kind of gladiator pits, but yeah, we kind of fell on definitely more Roman vibe. But I like that pity Angron. So he gets zipped away.
Just a big whiny baby.
Just a big whiny winged baby.
Well, I know that perpetual victim. I know you guys are being silly on purpose, but like legitimately the idea that like if you every time it like this, it is a fairly profound story if you examine it the way it's structured, in that like every time you're dealt a bad hand, you're given a choice of like, do you want to embrace the pain, like embrace your bitterness, embrace your rage about what that hand that you get, or do you choose to move forward and positively? And Angron is like the most extreme version of it, where it's like all of his friends are dead. He's been betrayed and humiliated and denigrated his whole life. But the choice is still, do you make your life better or do you continue to wallow in misery? And that like the end result of becoming what Angron becomes is what happens if you choose to wallow, right? So it is an interesting story, and I think like as we'll go through it, that'll pop out more and more of it's about choice.
Yeah, like I guess tragic would be he didn't devote himself to taking skulls and blood for Khorne, you know? But then since he did that, that's no longer really tragic. Now he's a fucking villain. Like now you pity what happened to him. He's the bad guy.
I'm gonna counter with he's actually more of a tragic hero in the classical sense of tragedy, but
no one here is an ancient Greek Christian, so I'm gonna use modern definitions for these.
But he fits it so well. All right.
So he's given the what is it called? The Warhounds, later named the World Eaters. During the Great Crusade, the World Eaters were the Imperium's most brutal instrument, a legion unleashed to break worlds that refused to kneel. Once known as the Warhounds, they had prized discipline and brotherhood. But under Angron, they became an engineer of ceaseless violence, driving themselves into the heart of every war with howling fury. Implanting the Butcher's Nails to mirror their Primarch's agony, they fought in a state of constant blood madness, caring little for strategy or survival, so long as the enemy died screaming. Compliance was achieved not through diplomacy or awe, but through annihilation. Entire populations butchered in nights of relentless slaughter. Though their results were undeniable, the cost was horrific. As the Legion burned through its own warriors as readily as its foes, becoming feared not only as the enemies of the Imperium, but by the Allies as well. A tragic reflection of Angron's own endless war against pain, rage, and the chains he could never escape. And we got a fun quote here. Monuments are dust, tales merely words, soon forgotten, but blood is forever. And this was said during the Great Crusade. So this is, he's already fucking on that annihilation, destruction path for sure.
Yeah, like I said, the demon that was whispering in his ear was there at the beginning. And it wasn't a chaos demon. It was like a different kind of demon. But eventually all of this attitude caught up to him. At the Emperor's command, Leman Russ and the Space Wolves were dispatched to confront Angron, a task that was less a summons than a threat wrapped in the language of brotherhood. Russ, the Emperor's executioner, was sent not merely to speak, but to ensure obedience, to drag the Red Angel back to Terra if words failed. The Space Wolves came as a wall of fangs and iron, their presence a warning that Angron's savagery and the butchery of the World Eaters had finally drawn the Master of Mankind's full attention. On the dead fields of Genna, Russ stood before Angron and demanded submission in the Emperor's name, offering restraint and judgment instead of unchecked slaughter. Angron answered with scorn and defiance, seeing only another chain being raised against him. What followed was not diplomacy, but violence-based, barely contained. A clash of wills and blood that ended without resolution, proving that Angron would not be leashed and that even the Emperor's chosen hound could not force the Red Angel to kneel or abandon the path of rage that was already consuming him.
Yeah, like he gets a couple chances, like even here, maybe Russ isn't the best negotiator to go tell somebody to calm down, but there's a chance of like just, hey, you have gone too far. You're going to keep going, and he does keep going.
Again, another decision, right?
Yeah.
He's given choices.
Yeah.
And we all have those choices to make in our lives. Do you choose to be like Angron or a loyal servant of the Emperor?
Yeah, do you
want to kill your mentor?
Yes. And usurp them. All right, let's get into some betrayal. By this point in his life, Angron had already been broken by 3 great betrayals, each one cutting deeper than the last. The first was his own. In the fighting pits of New Syria, the nails drove him to turn his strength against the one who had taught him mercy and defiance, forcing Angron to live with the knowledge that he had murdered his mentor with his own hands. The second betrayal came from the Emperor himself, who tore Angron from New Syria at the moment of his last stand, leaving his gladiator brothers and sisters to be slaughtered, while their Primarch was dragged away in chains of light and duty. The third betrayal was constant and inescapable. Etched into his very skull, the Butcher's Nails gnawing at his thoughts, eroding memory, reason, and will, turning pain into command and rage into law. Between these wounds, Angron was left with nothing solid to stand on. He had betrayed what he loved, been betrayed by the one who claimed to be his father, and was now being betrayed every heartbeat by his own mind, a Primarch trapped in a war he could never stop fighting.
All right, James, this is where I'm going to push back on you a bit. So we get a little more into the Butcher's Nails, and like it is eating away his brain. So there are chunks of his brain, like eventually those nails keep getting driven deeper and deeper, that the brain is essentially gooified, removed, and replaced with Butcher's Nails. So the willpower, the reason, all that kind of goes away. And he gets those really early. And that doesn't mean that he loses all that willpower very early. But like, man, probably pretty quick.
Yeah, he relies a lot more on instinct and like his reptile brain than his prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, and like literally now the butcher's nail is, instead of the reason part of your brain having like an actual part, it's now butcher's nail. So does that change your mind at all in your stance on it?
No, I think that's part of the drama of making this the most extreme case, right? Like a lot of 40K narrative is taking something to the maximal to see what happens when you do that. And I think the story remains the same, because every time Angron makes a decision, he's choosing the bitterness decision, right? It's not that it's like and it's based on his choices or based on what his motivations are, right? It's always based on, I don't want to master, and I'm bitter at the things that have been done to me. It's not like, I think we'd give a more tragic feel to him if it was just, oh, he's reacting to something and feels guilt or feels remorse or wishes he didn't do the things he does. But that's not really the way he's depicted. He's depicted as bitterness and resolute in his bitterness. And so, I mean, I'm sure somebody's going to pull out some book, page 39, where Angron feels remorse on some random thing and come at me, bro. But I think the overall story, I think most people would agree, it is him choosing bitterness and choosing to sit in that state.
Yeah, I think some of the more tragic cases of like what you might be talking about for Angron is more so like the Marines that serve him. A lot of them, you could argue, are like a little bit more tragic, where they do things like, oh crap, I actually kind of regret that, or in a blind fury I killed someone that I cared about, which did happen to Angron too, to be fair. But that's a kind of a different story than, like you're saying, about his brain does still function. Like butcher's nails are not, like you said, he's still making choices. And then yes, at times that executive functioning is hijacked, but that's not all the time, and that's not what drives his purpose. That's more like in the moment, right? Like when the nails are biting, he loses his sanity and like starts killing everything around him. But that's still not his character.
Yeah, and if we told the story differently, let's say Angron is a different kind of person. Like he's given the butcher's nails, but he's always confronted with trying to make the world better, despite the fact he has these rages where he does things that are horribly destructive. That would almost be like a more noble character. He'd be like, despite the things that are out of his control, despite the things that are torturing him and slowly killing him, he still like is resisting the evil that's consuming him. And that is a different character than Angron. That's not who he is.
Yeah. I guess even if you remove all his brain, what's left in his like deepest, darkest part is like there's something wrong there.
Yeah. There could be something here. Maybe, I don't know if the authors here like made the butcher's nails sort of motif, if they had this in mind, but there's almost maybe something meta or symbolic about it, that like that's how maybe like resentment and bitterness affects us all. Is it just like it's like a torture device, right? Like driven into our heads and makes us behave in irrational and exuberant ways. But just a thought.
Well, I mean, I think we probably, like, when you apply this to your life, and that's why I do love Angron as a story so much, is if I'm sure you know people in your life that are consumed with bitterness, and it goes into someone's soul and just kind of sits there and poisons. And it's like the things that have been bad, the resentment that someone holds onto that, it doesn't hurt the person that hurt you. It only hurts you. And so it's like a self-damaging thing that consumes more and more. And at the end of your life, a bitter life is just a husk of a person, right? It feels like all that other stuff gets whittled away and all that's left is the bitterness, right? So maybe the butcher's nails is a good metaphor for bitterness in general. Is it's like, it's this thing that replaces you, and it's just all that's left is this husk. So yeah, Jordan, that sounds perfectly right to me.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, until you go on a murderous rage and want to do a suicide mission on Terra, yeah.
There's limits, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken of the butcher's nails, is there an aspect to them where they're quote unquote fed? Like you feed them and they become stronger over time? Because if that is the case, that would also strengthen the Mr. of Battles argument there.
I don't know about that. I think maybe what's more implied is just that eating away the brain. So the more it eats away, the less resistance you actually do have
to the next time. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, this is Dark Age tech. You know, I'm not a Dark Age scientist. Not yet anyways. I'm still going to college. You can get Warhammer college lessons now. Apparently that's a real thing. It's a joke.
Well, if they're not coming to us for lessons, they're
oh, remember that Mark, remember that university professor we interviewed? Is he doing those?
Yeah, maybe he's doing it. Yeah.
All right. These betrayals curdled Angron's pain into a lasting poisonous hatred of the Emperor. To Angron, the master of mankind was not a savior, but the final slaver. A distant tyrant who spoke of unity and enlightenment while leaving Angron's true family to die, screaming on the red sands of Nuceria. Every pulse of the butcher's nails reinforced that belief, turning memory into agony and grief into rage, until the Emperor's name became inseparable from loss. Where other Primarchs saw a father or a god, Angron saw only hypocrisy. A ruler who could command the stars, but would not lift a hand to save a single army of slaves. In Angron's mind, the Emperor had stolen his death, his brothers and sisters, and even his right to mourn. And in doing so, forged a resentment so deep and feral that obedience was impossible. Only defiance, violence, and an unending thirst to tear down the Imperium that had broken him. Quote, "You kept that mule, Cor Pharaon. Russ kept his kin friends. The lion kept Luther. Humans, brothers, and foster fathers, saved and raised into legion ranks. But not me, not Angron. No. Did the Emperor teleport his gold-wrapped custodians down to help me and my army? No. Did he free the war hounds and order them to battle, fight alongside me? No. Did he save my brothers and sisters the way he spared and honored the lion's closest kin? The way he honored Cor Pharaon? No, no, and no. No mercy for Angron. Angron the Oathbreaker. Angron the Betrayer." End quote. Angron explaining his anger towards the Emperor to his brother Lorgar, Primarch of the Wordbearers.
Yeah, just not happy. We wonder often why the Emperor made this choice. We kind of came up with one that we didn't talk about on this episode, which was kind of this planet Nuceria was kind of already in the stage of compliance. The Emperor already had it kind of ready to go, or they weren't even hostile towards the Emperor. So then, you know, maybe part of it was the planetary ruler is like, I'll join your Emperor, but I get to kill this army first, or something like that. Some trade-off where the Emperor is like, okay, you know, we can't. I've already made the deal or whatever, and it just really doesn't kind of think it'd be a big deal. But I also like the one we talked about where it's like, yeah, you keep all these guys, and ultimately they're all just gonna turn on you too, just like they turned on their last rulers.
Yeah, it does kind of seem a little odd the way that the Emperor behaved. Like it almost set Angron up for failure and to hate the Emperor. Yeah, you kind of think you'd have like a little more foresight than he did. But...
Well, let me put in a little bit more controversy in here, because in most Primarch's cases, when the Emperor finds them, they've now captured a planet. They're the ruler of it, and they've got their whole little army already built, and it's just a matter of making them Space Marines, basically. Whereas in the case of Angron, it's the reverse. He's about to get obliterated, and his army is losing. And so where all the other Primarchs have proven themselves, Angron hasn't.
That's interesting. Yeah, like they're not worthy to be Space Marines. Like, yeah. Then I think there's one other one that doesn't, or maybe a couple other ones that don't capture planets. But yeah, Angron's basically the one that doesn't. He's in that state of failure.
I don't think he's the only one that doesn't, but yeah, he's definitely one of the few.
Yeah, like, you know, we don't know anything about Alfarius's home planet. There's a couple like
oh,
that.
come on. You don't believe Alfarius has control of his own planet?
He controlled his own galaxy. You just don't know it yet.
Shit. He's controlling you two right now. You're just Hydra agents. I can see it.
Christian is Omegan and I'm Alfarius.
Yeah, you're so similar.
I'm actually bald
looking as I
underneath
look at
this hat. Yeah.
you.
Mark, did you in the previous episode talk at all about what Angron could have been, like his more noble aspects or traits had the nails not been?
We did mention, like, you know, there is a brief period on the planet that Angron is like the best gladiator, you know, the champion gladiator, and he sticks his neck out for his brothers and sisters, and he won't intentionally kill certain gladiators, and he has a sense of honor and all that kind of stuff. I'd say that would be kind of the best of him that we talk about.
Yeah, like all the Primarchs and their legions kind of exhibit certain traits, and some of them, even the corrupted ones, in theory, there's like a potential noble aspect to them. Again, going to that question of choice, had the Primarch been good, those traits would have been more expressed versus their more negative ones. In Angron's case, I'd imagine his like thing to be like brotherhood and even maybe like a fatherhood type role, and like exemplifying those kind of like relationships, especially amongst like a fraternity of like, you know, warrior brothers, like that's overall Space Marine culture. Had he not had the nails embedded in his head or chosen the bitter route, he might have been like a Primarch of Brotherhood if he had been not gone to chaos.
Okay, so here we'll throw in this little pepper here. Like, Angron wasn't found for a long time. Like, he was like the fourth last one found. So the Legion was active for many, probably at least, you know, 100, 150 years without him. And they, by the end of it, were already like super bloodthirsty, violent, already over the top. You know, that we talk about what happens first. Does the Legion mimic the Primarch? Does the Primarch, you know, but in this case, it seems like there's just that rotten core.
Well, we can bring it back to my favorite Primarch again, because that's similar to the way the Blood Angels were. But then when Sanguinius comes, he turns that vice into a virtue and makes them pursue things beyond just the bloodlust that they have to turn them into something noble. So I think that
they're fighting the Black Rage as well. So like they have like some type of actual psychic attack on them. So it's not just like they have their challenges too. So I like this. Yeah.
So I think there is an element of it is reflective of Angron's personality that they remain that thing after he takes charge. Yes, they were brutal before, but that might be a gene seed thing or proclivity that they have. Same with the Blood Angels, but it can be tempered if it's controlled properly, but Angron doesn't control it properly.
Yeah. I would also counter with that brotherhood I was talking about, or that even fraternal relationship slash paternal fatherly behavior. The Legion, even though yes, they're all bloodthirsty and stuff, they really wanted that father figure. And you can see in how they like end up mutilating themselves too. Like they really desire for Angron's approval. Like that's a constant theme with the Legion as a whole. I'm sure you'll get into it when you delve more into the World Eaters, but yeah, like their whole thing is like this desire to have their Primarch father embrace them and acknowledge them, which he doesn't, because he's all like in his own stewing in his own anger and bitterness, and even kills his own sons. But that still is a huge motivator for the Legion, to the point that they also embrace the Butcher's Nails. Like, we want to be like our father. And I think there is like almost a mimetic story element to that too. And I think that's like the loss and the corruption of what could have been like a good Angron and a good World Eaters Legion.
Yeah, interesting.
There's a lot of depth to Angron, surprisingly.
Yeah, I think this is one of the more like philosophical, metaphysical of them all. It really works well.
Yeah, I'm like, fuck, I got to make better choices with my life. I got to go make amends with some people. I was angry here. Otherwise, my daughter's going to come home with a bloody chicken one day. We don't know. We don't want that. So that was kind of where we left Angron. Now we kind of get to the Horus Heresy. Angron was always doomed to stand with Horus because the Imperium had already made him its enemy long before the heresy began. Stripped of his chosen death, robbed of his gladiator kin, and left to rot beneath the ceaseless torture of the butcher's nails, Angron had no faith left in the Emperor's vision of order or unity. Horus did not need to persuade him with grand ideals or lies of a better future. He only needed to acknowledge Angron's pain and name the betrayer for what it was. Where the Emperor had commanded obedience and offered cold justification, Horus offered validation, turning Angron's suffering into a weapon and his hatred into purpose. In truth, Angron did not choose Horus so much as he chose war against the Imperium that had failed him. The path of rebellion was the only road left to the Primarch, who had already lost everything worth defending. And when the galaxy split, Angron could only fall toward the side that promised blood, vengeance, and the freedom to hate without restraint. That's a great slogan. Hate without restraint. I think we can make some banners out of that. I like it. I got a quote here for you from Angron, and this is his thoughts on tyrants. When the Emperor dies under his axes, when the final thought is of how the Great Crusade was all in a pathetic futility, and when his last sight is Angron's iron smile, then the master of mankind will learn what Angron has known since he has picked up his first blade. Freedom is the only thing worth fighting for. That is why tyrants always fall. He hates it, man. He goes hard on them since day one.
Yeah. That is, it is interesting too, that like it's Horus's way of getting him on side is just so simple. It doesn't take any effort because Angron's already ready. He's just waiting for someone else to do it, which is also interesting. Like, is that an act of cowardice on Angron's part that he wasn't the first one to do it? Like he was bitter, but he wasn't willing to actually do something about it. Like, is that another character flaw in Angron, that despite all the anger, he wasn't going to do anything about it? He was just going to stew forever.
Yeah. Like, those people who just stew forever. And then they want like attention almost. They want that like validation almost. Yes, and they get comfortable in it because you call your friend, you're like, oh, I had a bad day, and he's like, it's okay, Angron, just go slaughter another planet, buddy. Like, he likes it, but he always needs that constant approval. Now I find people with that self-wallowing kind of problem.
Interesting. Well, let's get to atrocity, because that's what Angron's all about. And Isstvan 3. By the opening years of the 31st millennium, as the world leaders sank ever deeper into savagery, Angron's brothers raised their protests before the Emperor. Yet the master of mankind, withdrawn to Terra after Eleanor, chose a bitter solution. He sent Horus Lupercal, the son he trusted most, to drag Angron back into obedience. But Horus was already rotting from within. Corrupted on Davin, he saw in Angron a creature of raw grievance and open wounds. With cruel precision, Horus stoked the hatred, reminding Angron of Nuceria, of chains of abandonment. He whispered that the Emperor was weak, unworthy, a tyrant who failed his son, and that a stronger master must rise, a master like Horus. Horus spoke the words Angron ached to hear. When the galaxy ignited in rebellion, the world leaders hurled themselves into treachery with howls of joy. They became one of the first traitor legions, marching beside the sons of Horus, the Death Guard, and the word bearers, as blood consecrated the new war. At Isstvan 3, the heresy revealed its true face. Horus declared open defiance, and Angron led the world leaders in the first ground assault, unleashed against loyalist Astartes, including his own sons who had survived the betrayal from orbit. The virus bombing of Coral City had butchered billions, their psychic death cries said to eclipse even the Astronomicon itself. Yet the loyalists endured. Warned by Sol Tavits, nearly two-thirds survived. Furious and impatient, Angron defied Horus outright, leading a second drop pod assault when extermination failed. 50 companies fell screaming with the sky, the Red Angel at their head, landing west of the Prince enters palace to hunt down their own kin. Yeah, this was like this is an interesting part of the book, like when Angron comes down, like foiling the plots of Horus, because Angron is not he's not a strategic mind. He's just a weapon, basically. He's a hammer. There's a part earlier in the book too where Angron is leading an assault on a fortress and basically brings down the whole fortress on top of himself because he's fighting like a madman. But it's not a way to win a war. It's just a way to maybe hit something hard, but he costs things, and this is a case of that.
Yeah. I remember that scene of him just coming down, and you're reading the book from the loyalist perspective of these characters that you've fallen in love with, the Salt Harvest, a couple other cool guys down there. And then Angron comes. Loken, yeah, exactly. And Angron comes, it's just like, oh shit. That's not gonna be good.
If I'm remembering,
go ahead.
It's been a while since I read the book too, but I do recall vaguely that there was also a world leader, maybe even a world leader captain who, when Angron shows up, a loyalist world leader is gonna face off against him, suicidal bravery. No, it should be me to challenge him, if I'm not mistaken. Something to that effect. But
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. It was a good moment. Obviously, it didn't go well for him, but
no, he's definitely gonna get destroyed.
The world leaders tore into their brothers with ecstatic violence, fratricide burning hotter than loyalty. Horus, enraged but trapped, was forced to support Angron's madness as the poison atmosphere prevented immediate orbital annihilation. Ground war followed, savage and prolonged. For nearly 2 months, the loyalists bled and delayed the inevitable, clinging to ruins beneath titans and endless bombardment. But once the skies cleared, the War Master ended it in fire. Loyalist lines were erased from orbit, and the truth of the new age was written in ash. The challenge had been issued. The Horus Heresy had begun.
Yeah, very cool. So he purges his own ranks. We've gone over Istvan 5 a whole bunch of times at this point. And I don't think the World Eaters do anything very interesting there. There's much more interesting moments. I feel like that's the time that, believe it or not, the Loyalists shine, even though they all get wiped out. But that's kind of part of their character arc more so than Angron. So we'll gloss over Istvan 5 a little bit here and carry on to his vibe, which is the Shadow Crusade.
All right. Let's start off with a quote. Let history mark my words well, for I care nothing about who sits proud on the throne of Terra when the last day dawns. Horus is a fine commander, but that's the limit of my admiration for that arrogant, preening bastard. I joined his rebellion because I can tolerate him easier than I can endure the abomination that names himself master of mankind. You want the truth of my life and death? I am Angron, the eater of worlds, and I am already dead. I died over 100 years ago in the mountains north of the city that enslaved me. I died after Desh Elika. Primarch Angron talking to his brother Lorgar.
Just for those who don't remember, Desh Elika was his mentor or whatever.
In the first blood-soaked days of the Horus Heresy, Lorgar, Primarch of the Word Bearers, loosed his hatred upon Ultramar. He commanded his most trusted monsters, First Chaplain Erebus and the Dark Apostle Corferion, to make war upon Gulliman's realm. This was vengeance pure and burning, for the shame that the 17th Legion had been forced to endure on Kur, made to kneel before the Emperor on the Ultramarines for their failure to uphold the Imperial truth. Lorgar never forgave the humiliation. He sanctified it in blood. The Wordbearers struck first at Kelth, and the victory was catastrophic. The Ultramarines were shattered, their strength broken, their ability to interfere with Horus's march on Terra all but destroyed. Upon Kelth's poisoned surface, Erebus completed his blasphemous rite, tearing reality open and birthing the ruin storm, an abomination of the warp so vast and violent that it eclipsed any storm seen since Old Night. It spread like a bleeding wound across the eastern fringe, drowning the stars in madness. At the same time, Lorgar led a second, more personal war. Alongside Angron and the World Eaters, he unleashed the Shadow Crusade upon the rest of Ultramar. The 500 worlds burned, 26 planets were erased in rapid succession, their populations butchered without mercy. This slaughter was not conquest, it was ritual, fuel for the runestorm, meant to tear the galaxy in half and seal Ultramar away behind a walls of screaming unreality. The storm achieved its purpose, reinforcements were denied, Terra was isolated, no fleet could pass, no astropathic cry could escape. The Imperium was cut open and left to bleed. During the Shadow Crusade, the World Eaters met the Ultramarines in open battle on the war world of Armatura. There, amid the ruins of the shattered capital, Guilliman's sons baited Angron's legion into a killing ground. Buildings were brought down in controlled collapses, burying World Eaters by the score, and entombing Angron himself beneath the mountains of stone and steel. When the Red Angel clawed his way free, his chain axes were ruined, their teeth torn away by the relentless slaughter. Gorechild, broken beyond repair, was hurled aside in disgust. The weapon that had drunk oceans of blood lay abandoned in the dust. Later, Khorne found it. Knowing Angron's hatred for inherited blades, knowing that superstition and the risk, he still had Gorechild reforged. From that day onward, Khorne bore the axe that Angron cast aside. Its rebirth born from betrayal, loyalty, and endless war, just like the Legion, it would help damn forever.
Yeah, so just to start there, we got basically Lorgar is going to basically use Angron as a weapon against the Ultramarines. He's got that grudge after, what was it called there? Fuck, it's been so long since Malcador was basically scolding the word bearers. I forget what that was called, that incident.
Yeah,
fuck. It's on the tip of my brain. But yeah, basically he's getting vengeance for that incident. So he's going to use Angron, who can kind of just point, he thinks, kind of just use.
Yeah, the interesting thing for anyone who's like, let me throw out a little grenade here. For all like the people who are like super chaos fans, like they always are, like they're always covered in vice, like all the chaos people. Even the way they're written in the books, and especially the way they like operate, it's very obvious that they're like, there's bitterness all over the chaos side of the Horus Heresy. Like Lorgar is obviously just frustrated and angry and bitter, and all the World Eaters, especially like just read a book with the World or the not the World Eaters, the Word Bearers. They're just so often, even infighting amongst themselves, they're fighting over perceived slights with each other and other groups. It's just there's so much bitterness and negativity on the chaos side. It is consumed with self-destruction almost, right? Like, and I think that was the whole thing that the Alpha Legion was hoping to do, is thinking, okay, yeah, we'll use chaos, the Horus Heresy, to blow up all of the humanity, because this side of the fight is just going to self-destruct in the end, and there's no way it can continue on, because like Lorgar, Angron, Horus, are these people going to run an empire? No, they're not. They're they're bitter, self-destructive people, right? And Angron, the worst of them.
One thing that was interesting that I've never really clicked until we were reading this was the Rune Storm. Like the galaxy's been ripped in half once. I am always so like, yes, I love that they ripped the galaxy in half in 40k. The Cicatrix Maledictum is so cool. But like the Rune Storm eventually gets healed. And I haven't read the book where that happens or how that happens, but that's just an interesting thought. And then like if we figure out how we do that, then you can maybe apply that to 40k, the Cicatrix as well. But just a little, I'm trying to make the Imperium better, one warp storm at a time is all.
They find the missing Primarch, Bob the Builder, who's able to stitch together the Rune Storm.
Exactly.
It's Monarchia, Mark, is what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Where the Word Bearers were forced to kneel in front of the Emperor.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, return to Nuceria. As the Shadow Crusade drowned whole systems in fire, Lorgar came to a grim understanding. Angron was unraveling. With every passing campaign, the Red Angel's mind frayed further, his fury sharpened into something terminal. The Butcher's nails were killing him far faster than the Emperor's savants. the Dark Mechanicum, or even Lorgar himself had foreseen. In the months following the Battle of Calth, Angron's neural decay accelerated violently, each surge a rage tearing more of his mind apart. The nails had never been meant for a Primarch. Angron's transhuman body fought endlessly to repair the damage, healing even as the implants burrowed deeper, shredding thought and reason. Seeing death race towards him, Lorgar urged Angron to return to Nuceria. The tyrants who had first driven the cursed device into Angron's skull would know its secrets better than any traitor savant. From them, answers could be torn free. Lorgar promised knowledge and fire. They would learn all that could be learned of the nails, and then Nuceria would burn until its city ran molten and its soil turned to glass. Angron would have his vengeance at last, whether he admitted to craving it or not. Hatred, trust, resistance, it meant nothing to Lorgar. He intended to haul Angron into damnation and immortality by force, gifting him to the dark gods regardless of his will. After a Terran century away, Angron returned to Nuceria. He walked the killing fields of Deshalika Ridge, where the bones of his gladiator brothers and sisters lay bleached beneath an uncaring sky. There, amid the exposed remains of those who had died free and defiant, the Primarch mourned. The memory of their last stand tore at him, even as his rage could not drown the pain. He went to Deshia to look upon the city that had once claimed ownership of his flesh and soul. There he had learned the lie that had endured for generations, that Angron had fled the final battle in terror, abandoning his comrades to slaughter. The rebels, they said, had died to last without him. The lie broke something final inside him. Consumed by wrath and grief, Angron gave a single command. Deshia was to die. Then Nuceria itself. No master would be left alive to remember him falsely.
Yeah, wild. Quick correction. Dashlika is not the mentor. That is like the place. That's the ridge where they all left. Sorry about that. But yeah, that is crazy. He basically, where's this one line? Sorry, I'll find it and then somebody else say something.
Well, I do notice it's interesting that it's like the degradation is fueled by him feeding it. So like every time he gives into these rages, it degrades him further, which I think is also, again, why I love Angron. It feeds into the way real rage works. Like if every time you give into a bad habit like that, it reinforces it in your brain, right? It rewrites your brain to do that more often. And so in the case of, he's just like an extreme case of the reality of the things he's encountering. And I think that makes him a profound character to deal with and to look at how he reacts to stuff.
Yeah, and then he comes and he finds his planet and he finds that they've been lying about them this whole time. Generations have been told that Angron just kind of pissed off, like just snapped him. That's kind of crazy. Like they've already been way, like, and then there must have been a deal there that, yeah, you can slander Angron. Like Angron wasn't allowed to go back to Nuceria just until now. He also wasn't, after the Emperor came, he used the other planet that the World Eaters were recruiting from. So it's just one of these things where he just like, he finds out this final lie of like, the only thing I cared about, you lied about. That just sends him off the edge.
Yeah, one thing that is interesting too is I want to put yourself in Angron's shoes. Like, if you were a healthy individual and you learned that someone had told a lie about you, like even about something you cared about, would you care after 100 years? Like let's say like someone's told a lie about someone you care about really badly. It's like, yeah, okay, that pisses me off. You make up a lie to say about my wife or something. I'd be really angry about that. But like after 100 years, like, do you care about these people are nothing to you?
If you have butcher's nails in your head, you do.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's like he's so consumed with that moment. That's all he is that betrayal on the hill.
Yeah.
I will push back a little bit. I think there is something to be said for the truth and legacy and things like that. Not to over downplay it, but at the same time, like you said, this character defining moment for his life is all that he is.
I care about the truth too, and it matters to me. But like the idea that like if some backwater planet town thinks something of you, who cares? You're one of the Primarchs of the Emperor. You're the second tier out of humanity. These people are nothing. And the fact that you can glass them in a moment means they're nothing. So what does their lie matter?
Well, it should be corrected. But yeah, how you correct it is also a big question mark. But
I mean, I think it's maybe like a feedback loop into the fact that he was taken against his will, and just his whole philosophy and outlook is, to not have any rulers. And even if he has a higher place of prestige, to him, that's not the highest value. Like freedom is the highest value. And so I don't know. I could kind of see in his own internal logic where he still believes that like all the people who enslaved him need to die. Basically.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Like why he would do it, because that's all he can think about is the bitterness of the things done wrong to him. And so that the lie is just another thing wrong to him that he can't tolerate. And so it's just another thing for him to be bitter about, and it just piles on to the point where it breaks his sanity. Yeah, I get why he cares, but I'm saying that's like why the choice to remain in the bitterness is such a dangerous one, because it piles up and destroys him in the end.
Yeah.
The arrival of the Ultramarines. Reboot Gilman's Ultramarine Retribution fleet, hounding the word bearers since the ashes of Calth, finally closed the trap as the traitor brothers butchered Noceria. At the system's edge, the 13th Legion's warship, Courage Above All, Gilliman's provisional flagship, tore free of the warp at the head of a void armada numbering 41 vessels. Its arrival, a blade driven into the world already screaming. The Ultramarines fleet bore the scars of survival. It was a wounded thing, stitched together from scratched or scattered battle groups. No pristine interdiction armada, but a desperate spear cast with what Gilliman could gather. It existed for one purpose alone: to strike, to hunt, to avenge. The cruisers and battleships of the 13th Legion ran hard alongside the traitor fleet, trading brutal broadsides at killing distance, presenting targets too massive to ignore. From beyond, the remainder of the armada carved the void with precise lance fire. Gilliman split his strength, driving relentlessly to annihilate Lorgar's flagship, Fidetalis Lex, while ordering boarding actions against the World Eater's dread vessel, the Conqueror. Yet this was never only a war of ships. The Ultramarines meant to bleed the planet itself. Noceria mattered. Vengeance mattered. As they had chased Corfarion to the maelstroms, so now they came for Lorgar and his allies, intent on dragging justice through fire and blood. Ultramarines warships plunged toward the planet, vomiting drop pods, assault landers, and gunships in burning arcs, forcing descent through any gap they could carve. The fleet surged over the traitors like a devouring swarm. But Loretta Sarin, Iron Will, commander of the Conqueror, answered with ruthless defiance, blasting multiple Ultramarine vessels from the sky as they dared to run to the surface. Even so, for the wreckage, left spinning Even so, for all the wreckage left spinning in flame, the 13th Legion would not be denied. The Ultramarines smashed through the Conqueror's murderous defense at last, and the warriors of Ultramar made planetfall on Narceria, arriving not as survivors, but as executioners in a war already soaked in grief and rage.
All right. True to their nature, the Ultramarines carved out hard footholds wherever they could, fortifying ground so their reinforcements might land under fire. For every bastion secured, another was drowned beneath the World Eater's assault, shattered by howling chain axes or smothered by the World Bearers chanting inexorable advance. The 12th Legion hurled itself at the 13th in frothing packs, proving why Imperial armies had learned to fear fighting beside them long before the heresy ever began. Unleashed, unchained, and utterly unrestrained, the World Eaters hacked through Ultramarine strongpoints. Slaves to the ecstasy of violence, burned into their minds by the butcher's nails buried in their flesh. The Ultramarines answered that savagery blow for blow, driven by cold fury and the thirst for retribution against those who had despoiled Calth and scarred its star. Into this storm marched the word-bearers, intoning blasphemous hymns and preaching the Book of Lorgar, advancing beneath icons of corroded metal and bleached bone dragged through the fields of corpses. High above the world, the Fidelitas Lex was already dying. Its armor was cratered and split, its void shields long since torn away. Cathedral spines and fortress structures clinging to its hull had been scoured into ruin by Ultramarines' wrath. The 13th Legion's fleet hurried it without mercy, strafing and trading broadsides, willingly bleeding themselves to strip the great ship of life one wound at a time. With each renewed assault, the Lex weakened further, its guns falling silent one by one as its battered hull failed. Still it fought, crawling with escort vessels, lashing out with its surviving macro cannons amid the glare of its own burning decks. From the command throne of the Courage Above All, Gilman directed the slaughter with grim resolve. The Fidelitas Lex would die first, carved by 1,000 cuts and erased from the board, while the Conqueror would be taken alive and murdered from within, just as Angron had always preferred.
Man, Gilliman's pissed. It's fun seeing an angry Gilliman. Like, they're talking about doing a Scouring series, or maybe they've confirmed it, and I think it's going to be fucking fun, man. You get these, like, vengeful Primarchs, but they don't go vengeful like Angron and resentful and bitter. Like, they're doing it for justice and the right reasons, I guess, as far as they can have them.
Yeah, it is kind of poetic that Gilliman, who's also known to be, like, tactical and cool-headed, is actually, like, using his own rage against Angron's rage, too. There's something poetic at that. And on that note, at last, amid the screaming tumult, the blue and gold demigod found the focus of his cold fixation. Gilman met Lorgar face to face, armed with 2 weapons, yet outreached by the word-bearer's Crozius. There was no bellowed oaths, no theatrical vows of vengeance, only the raw, hateful silence before impact. They collided, once power fists crashing against the war maul, energy fields shrieking as they repelled one another. The flare forced them apart. Around them, their sons butchered and died, unnoticed, unacknowledged. Lorgar shook the crackling lightning from his Crozius head and slowly denied this meeting with a tilt of his helm. Angron faced his wrathborn brother, the Ultramarines Primarch Rabot Gilliman, amidst the carnage on Nuceria. Both Primarchs fought without restraint, their movements a blinding smear of godlike violence beyond mortal comprehension. None had ever believed the champions of this age would tear at one another like beasts, nor grasped their depth of poison between them. Gilliman sought Lorgar for the sins inflicted upon the 500 worlds, for cities burned and faiths perverted. Driven by righteous fury, Gilliman slammed a fist into Lorgar's chest, crushing ceramite and bone alike. Lorgar answered with a faltering surge of telekinetic force, weak yet sufficient to hurl his brother aside. The Crozius followed, lightning trailing as it smashed into Gilliman's skull with the force of artillery. They stood beneath the ash-gray sky, one dying from unseen wounds, the other half-blinded, blood cascading from a shattered face. Locked in this mutual destruction, they were blind to the ruin consuming the world around them. And then Angron erupted from the Ultramarines' lines, a living catastrophe. His armor was wrecked, his twin chain blades screaming as they vomited shards of ceramite and hot red gore. He was drowned in blood after hours lost to the meat grinder of the front, a walking mass grave given form. Across his chest hung a bandolier of skulls torn from Deshalika Ridge. slicked red as though freshly slain. Even though the nail's constant agony that pleased him, he wanted his dead brothers and sisters to taste blood again. He had borne them across New Syria to this hollow eyes would watch their hated world burn. With a howl of pure murderous grief, the Red Angel hurled himself at Guilliman. Lorgar was forgotten, and the duel changed instantly, becoming a roaring storm of violence as Angron drove Guilliman backward beneath an unrelenting avalanche of blows, rage, and incarnate finally unleashed.
I like that line. Lorgar was forgotten, as he always is.
Left in the dust. Yeah, it's interesting that Angron found the skulls of his dead army and made a bandolier out of them.
Is that the skulls that he still has on his model now? In the 40K one?
I would assume
maybe. So. Like, I would imagine all other skulls you'd want to give to Khorne, otherwise.
Yeah, but these ones are special. These are his special skulls.
His special skulls, yes.
All right. And now we'll discuss how Angron went from a human Primarch to, if you're watching the stream, this behind me. That thing. That monstrosity. So the transformation of Angron. As the Primarchs tore at one another, Guilliman's gauntlet glanced from Angron's chest in a hammering blow. Ceramite cracked, chains snapped, and one of the skulls taken from Angron's fallen gladiator kin shattered, fragments spraying across the blood-soaked ground. Guilliman stepped back, and the ground remains beneath his heel, crushing bone into dust. Angron saw it. The desecration cut deeper than any blade. He hurled himself forward, his roar clawing its way out of his ruined throat. Too vast, too raw, too grief-soaked to be born of anything mortal. Lorgar saw it as well. The instant Guilliman's boot broke the skull, the warp seethed and swelled behind reality's skin. The Irisin began to chant in a tongue never before shaped by living flesh, his words falling into lockstep with Angron's scream of loss. His plan ignited. The sky above New Syria split wide as the rune storms answered, vomiting a crimson deluge. Blood and screaming phantoms distilled from 100 murdered worlds. Lorgar fixed his will upon his broken brother and called to the never-born, the things humanity named demons. He seized Angron's flesh, freezing his muscles, igniting his nerves. Synapses burned, spasms tore through sinew and bone as Angron's blood turned to mercury, then to molten fire, then to blasphemous flame. His howl became something else, rage poisoned by agony beyond reason. His body ripped itself apart as it grew, rose, and reshaped, perfectly through violence after a lifetime of torment. This was not salvation. This was apotheosis by cruelty. This was the birth of the Red Angel as a thing unchained from mortality. The World Eater librarians, those few spared the nails that killed psychers, felt the warp convulse. 19 remained. In desperation, they bound their minds together and forged the communion, a gestalt will born to defy Lorgar's ritual. Through the warp's screaming tides, the communion tore Angron's soul from his flesh. Within the Immaterium, the two powers clashed, will against will, each claiming the right to save Angron, each believing itself righteous. But the communion faltered. Lorgar's mastery of the warp was absolute, his purpose merciless. When the transformation was complete, the demon Primarch stood revealed. Angron turned his gaze upon the librarians, upon the ones whose mere presence had made the nail shriek and his brain bleed for decades, upon the tormentors who now dared strike at his brother, hurling their witch light at Lorgar as he knelt wounded and bleeding. Angron remembered their pain, and he came for them.
Yeah, so even this transformation, it wasn't his choice. He's still a slave. Like he doesn't like he doesn't choose this path for himself. He ends up this slave. He ends up even more bitterment. Like the bitterment doesn't ever lead you anywhere well, essentially.
Yeah, he sort of traded Horus for Khorne, I guess.
And he didn't even realize he was doing it. Somebody else made that choice for him again. So it's just too blind to see. So the transformation continues. The fury of a newly risen demon Primarch fell upon the surviving librarians, each dying a different, screaming death. In the slaughter, Angron finally tore him from his legion, the frailty he had always despised, excising the last echo of the warhounds that lingered in the 13th. I think I've been saying 13th this whole time, but it's actually 12th. Oh no, the word Ultramarines are the 13th. That's why. The World Eaters, Librarius, was annihilated utterly, a truth that delighted Khorne, who had suffered no witchery among those sworn to his creed of slaughter.
Just to go back, is the soul that's in Angron as a demon Angron, or is it a demon that is now like kind of similar to Fulgrim? Is it demon in control, or is it Angron still?
It's still him. It's described as him now being like just like trapped in demon form. Like he doesn't like it. He doesn't want it. It's constant pain for him even. Now it's just an eternity of suffering, but it is still him in there.
Right. So it's different than Fulgrim then.
Yeah. Like he even does Fulgrim now.
Sorry, finish your thought, Mike. I was gonna say even
now he just applies to all the demon rules. Sorry, Christian, internet lag.
Yeah, no, I'll get no. I cut you off first. Even with Fulgrim, there was a kind of back and forth they did with him where yes, now he is actually in his own body. I think they went down a weird path at one point when they were authoring the Horus Heresy novels where they wanted to replace certain Primarchs with full demons. Even Horus kind of goes through a phase of this where they're like, is it even Horus anymore? Is it some other entity that's inhabiting his body? They got really esoteric and weird with it. But then I think they kind of sort of backtracked on it and put the Primarchs back in control because people didn't like that they were just demons and it wasn't the Primarch anymore. It was a whole kind of weird phase at a bunch of Primarchs.
Interesting. Well, because I thought the whole thing with Fulgrim, not to get too far into the weeds, was that he's still in there, but there's a demon in charge.
Yeah, and then they kind of switched places for a bit, and then I think they settle on him actually being back in his own body. But there was this like back and forth for a little while, and I think that was like a push and pull between creative direction that made its way into the books. That you can tell. Because even Horus had a period like that where people were saying like Horus isn't even Horus anymore, it's something else, and they kind of backtrack on it a little bit because that kind of ruins the whole story if none of the Primarchs are actually the Primarchs.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah. Lorgar had given the 12th Legion wholly to the Blood God, body and soul. From that hour onward, there would be a nothing but blood, an endless sea of it, rising and falling with the rhythm of eternal war. In the aftermath of Angron's apotheosis, a broken and grievously wounded Rabuc Guilliman fled Nuceria. He could not stand before what his brothers had become, nor truly grasp the depth of their damnation. The World Eaters finished their work upon the planet, scouring it until no human life remained. Angron, now the living incarnation of Khorne's eightfold path, cast the dust of Nuceria from his feet and never spared the world another thought. Lorgar believed he had saved his brother. In his mind, there had been no other path. He alone had sought to end the slow murder of the Butcher's Nail, to free Angron from the life defined solely by pain. He alone had acted. With Angron remade, the Shadow Crusade turned away from Ultramar at last, ready to reunite with Horus. Terror would be next to burn. Aboard the Conqueror, the Demon Primarch spoke his first command in his new existence. Khorne was ordered to butcher the slaves in the lower deck and raise a vast throne of skulls in his name. To further arm his reborn wrath, Angron was gifted a colossal black rune sword, the Black Blade, fashioned for him by the Dark Mechanicum, a weapon worthy of the monster he became.
Of course, he has to make himself a throne of skulls. It's also kind of interesting and like ironic that Angron, who was always against masters and slavery, like has his own slaves and even butchers them on a whim. Like he becomes the monster that he fought against his whole life, which is another poetic kind of thing.
Beware when fighting monsters. that Nietzsche quote.
Yeah, be careful when fighting monsters. You don't become monsters, and when you stare into the abyss stares back.
Yeah.
In the wake of the Shadow Crusade, the Demon Primarch Angron and his world eaters hurled themselves into a galaxy-wide slaughter, a roaming storm of rage and blood that answered no summons, not even the War Master's command to gather at Ulanor for the final march on Terra. Horus, forced to rein in the monster he had helped unleash, sent Perturabo, Lord of Iron, with a single unyielding order. Angron was to be dragged to Ulanor whatever the cost. The Iron Warriors finally conquered the world eaters on the world of Dulge, a planet already murdered to silence. Its people had been torn apart and piled into obscene mountains of corpses, offerings to a god that never tired. No sooner had Perturabo taken in the carnage than the Iron Warriors were drowned in a frenzy of chain blades and demonic howls as berserk world eaters and coronate horrors fell upon them. Then the heavens split and Angron descended into the slaughter, a living apocalypse given form. Perturabo met Angron in brutal combat, and the Demon Primarch eclipsed him in raw strength and monstrous speed. Yet the Lord of Iron endured, bleeding but unbroken, and drove his words like knives into Angron's soul. He named him what he had always been, a slave born in chains, now bound forever to rage and darkness. Enraged beyond reason, somehow more so, I guess. Angron struck harder, but Perturabo's cold calculation, bolstered by the Iron Circle and relentless artillery, slowly boxed the world leaders in, battering them down and forcing even Angron to yield ground. At that moment, an Ultramarine's fleet clawed into orbit. Angron only laughed, promising death for all. Perturabo answered with cruelty of his own, reminding Angron that he had once watched his fellow slaves butchered on Nuceria and had been powerless to save them. That wound cut deeper than any blade. In answer, Angron tore reality open, conjuring a warp storm through which both traitor fleets fled, slipping from Gilman's grasp and racing at last towards Ulanor. Angron would next be witnessed at the height of the Solar War, when a titanic warp rift split the void above Luna, unleashing the traitor armada upon the throne world. Amid the battle for the Sol system, the Red Angel was seen crouched upon the battlements of his flagship, the Conqueror silent, waiting, a caged god of slaughter poised to be unleashed upon Terra itself.
Yeah, so just going around the galaxy, mindlessly slaughtering everything until Perturabo finally is like, okay, we need you over this way. That you can't tell that guy what to do. Any tyrant he's going to fight against now at this point. He's going to fight against anything that approaches him, really.
Maybe the real tyrants are the friends we made along the way.
Maybe. Yeah.
Right.
We get to this cool scene here. The warp rift just opens. The siege has already begun. But now Angron's there.
Man, I'm really impressed that we got this far without having to write 50 novels.
How could we condense such vast amount of information?
Yeah. It's kind of amazing. Okay, continue.
All right, let's get into it. The Siege of Terra. By the hour the Siege of Terra was unleashed, Angron was no longer merely corrupted. He was chained utterly to Khorne's will and to the screaming hunger gnawing inside his soul. He raged at Horus, demanding to be hurled straight at the Imperial Palace, uncaring that the Emperor's psychic aegis around Terra would likely tear his demon form apart until it was broken. Death meant nothing to him, only blood did. When Angron learned that the Death Guard, not he, would lead the traitor assault, his fury ignited into slaughter. He rampaged through the depths of the Conqueror, tearing apart anything that crossed his path, mortal or Astartes alike, leaving the deck slick with gore and echoing with screams. His rage was so unrestrained that even the ship itself was at risk. Lotara Sarin, the mortal captain of the Conqueror, understood the danger. If Angron reached to the tech priests tending the plasma reactor, the ship would die in a firestorm. To avert annihilation, she conspired with the Night Lord's captain Gendor Skrayvok, the Painted Count, and with Karn himself. Their solution was desperation made manifest. Angron would be removed by force, cast into the shifting torture maze aboard the Night Lord's flagship, Nightfall, a place long steeped in Kurz's cruelty. With no other choice, Khorne confronted his Primarch. Angron spoke to him with warped clarity, claiming the Dark Gods had whispered of Khorne's fate, of his destiny as Khorne's chosen. Angron would not allow that future to stand. He sought to take it for himself. Father and son clashed in a storm of violence, but Khorne could not hope to match the feral divinity of his gene-sire. As Angron prepared the killing blow, Khorne acted. He slammed a teleport homer onto the demon Primarch and triggered it. In an instant of screaming warp light, Angron was torn from the Conqueror and hurled into the bowels of the Nightfall, banished not by defeat but by necessity. Still raging, still betrayed, still denied the blood he craved. How poetic.
Fucking cool that you can just teleport people like that if you give them a little homer. Like, teleport you into the sun. Boom.
I think you just solved 40K.
Yeah, seriously.
No, I'm always conflicted about Angron's rages and any character that's just like that has this kind of like unrestrained rage. It's a cool like trope. Chaos dreadnoughts often suffer from it too, where they're like uncontrollable and have to be like chained down and stuff. The problem is like how many world leaders do you have to be like constantly being butchered and also butchering each other all the time? Like at some point it kind of gets into a space of like,
no man, their middle management is so efficient, man. They just have it going so smoothly.
Yeah, like this happens a lot. I don't know. Yeah, I always get kind of mixed feelings whenever you have this like berserker type character that is constantly killing its own troops.
I think it's a problem with the world eaters in general, the amount of casualties they're described as having. Every battle is high casualties for both sides. Yeah. Every time. And so it's like at this point they should be the smallest legion realistically, because like if you have, let's say you're an ultramarine and you say, oh, we lost a lot of guys, but like Gilliman is doing his best to minimize casualties, and then there's the world eaters that just are slamming guys in, and as long as a lot of people are screaming, they're happy. You would think that they'd be running low on guys, and I think that is an issue with the way the world eaters are depicted. I think that they should be. I think they haven't written a good way of explaining around that.
They have for all the legions, because they're not the only ones that constantly suffer from high casualties. Iron Warriors and Death Guard also both constantly suffering from high attrition. They did introduce these kind of like mass-produced inducti squads who are like not as good as full regular Space Marines, are kind of like more mass-produced, especially for the Horus Heresy, because across the board, like the Horus Heresy, they dragged out too to be this like longer conflict with these multiple battles where, yeah, attrition rates is always going to be a problem on every side. And so they have these like meat grinder Space Marines that all legions can actually tap into and like just mass recruit. And they are also not as good as like the full formed, full time to incubate Astartes. So they do kind of have a way out with it, but there's like a reasonable limit of like when you're constantly killing your own and then constantly dying in battle as well against your enemies. Like I said, both the Iron Warriors and Death Guard also suffer from high attrition rates, but they're at least not killing each other in the background all the time too. And then on top of that, like when your whole legion is all crazy, psyched out berserkers, like how do you recruit without butchering all the recruits? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that's why they usually avatars of rage like this are often depicted like demonically, and I think that is a better place for it, because like, yeah, the eternal rage that destroys itself must inherently come from like a otherworldly place, because if it's self-destructive to this level, which this kind of rage is depicted as, well, the definition of self-destructive is it destroys the self. So you have to kind of have an explanation for how it's working. And if there's two, yeah, you make a good point. It's so much effort that other chapters put into keeping their Space Marines alive. how do you do that when you're completely psychotic all the time? I don't know how that works.
My only little solution, and it's not good, is just we kind of mentioned how Angron was the fourth last found. So, you know, for most of the Great Crusade, they weren't completely berserkers. They did have that routine. So, you know, near the end, if you don't maintain your supply lines, your induction rights, all those kind of stuff, you might not feel it right in that first 10-year period, but then eventually after the Horus Heresy, they do really feel it, and they're like one of the smallest legions, it's said.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, it's pretty sloppy still.
I will also kind of push back on my own point here and say that Khorne berserkers, counter to how they're often portrayed, aren't always complete utter psychopaths that are constantly butchering each other. Too, there are moments of clarity in certain ones that are more clear than others. They're not all like frothing at the mouth lunatics all the time. So like you do have apothecaries still. You do have, I'm sure there are, despite World Eater berserkers being the poster boys of World Eaters, I'm sure they had heavy weapon squads. They had other units that are still able to keep enough sanity to still express some kind of like tactical knowledge and keep some kind of rational approach to things despite the butcher's nails and things.
I got an image pulled up of just World Eaters with a heavy bolter, and fuck,
I freaking love that. Yeah,
that's how you make the blood flow for sure.
I did on a personal note, I did make a squad of World Eaters that use bolt guns, and they look freaking sick.
Yeah.
Not it kind of like it's a problem that even Chaos as a whole is often confronted with. There's in that Ultramarines movie, which isn't very good across the board, the Chaos guys, which are Black Legion, are depicted kind of in this berserkery way where they're just like charging headlong with chainsword and bolt pistol in hand and just getting mowed down. And it's like that those tactics will only get you so far until everyone is dead in your squad. Like there's got to be some elements of even Chaos who are cool-headed enough to be able to conduct a battle without getting their side just completely annihilated.
There is the Night Lords book series does a good job of that. They're often like struggling with resources that they don't have enough of, and so they have to really rely on their kind of hit and run tactics to like steal equipment and make sure that they get the advantage on other Marines. I think that was the best I've seen it done for Chaos. It still feels kind of difficult to rationalize, but that is the way that I'd expect Chaos to be, is that they don't have the same logistical support that a normal Imperium chapter would have. They got to kind of do things a little differently. But the Night Lords are a little bit more of a rational chapter anyway, or Legion anyway.
Yeah, like for all we know, the World Eaters, they didn't even know their casualty rate till the end. Like, all right, let's sound up some numbers. Oh my God, there's only 7 left.
I like when you're playing with Khorne on the tabletop in 40K and he like kills some of your guys because you don't charge. I love that mechanic. It's super fun.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into Animal in the Deep. Deep within the dark guts of the Night Lord's flagship, Angron was caged inside a prison built for suffering alone. And the Night Haunter's command, Perturabo, had forged his torment, an iron mockery of his own Cavia Ferrum, designed not merely to hold a captive, but to grind a demigod down through endless frustration and pain. The prison was a warped labyrinth, its blank walls and cruel geometry denying reason itself. Angles lied, distances betrayed thought. Any attempt to chart its passages shattered the mind, folding logic back upon itself, in turns that could not exist. Even after dozens of attempts, no prisoner could trace more than a few bends before reality unraveled. This was the same maze Kurz had once used to break Vulcan, dragging agony out across long, merciless months. Angron was swallowed by it. He raged through its corridors, smashing into dead ends, triggering hidden blades, crushing fields and traps meant to maim and mock. There was no escape, only repetition. Violence without release, fury with nowhere to go. The nails screamed without pause, driving him onward through a maze that fed on despair. The Daemon Primarch Angron descended upon the throne world during the Siege of Terra, the black blade clenched in his grasp. Above, on Terra itself, the traitors finally succeeded in their blasphemous rites. The Emperor's psychic Aegis weakened, torn and bleeding under warpcraft and sacrifice. With the barrier faltering, the Nightfall opened its holds and fired Angron into the void like a living weapon. Wrapped in fire and hatred, the Red Angel fell screaming through space, crashing towards the throne world, loosed at last, not freed, but unleashed. That's the cartoonish 40K I know and love.
Yeah, just drop potted a human onto the planet like that.
I love that. It's an awesome moment. He's a demon. He doesn't need a ship.
Yeah, it's that like fallen angel thing too, of just like the wings are burning up and like, classic image.
Being cast from heaven, yeah.
A comet of fury and rage. When the demon Primarch tore into Terra's atmosphere, he burned like the falling god of hate, a screaming comet of fire and iron. His impact shattered the ground itself, the shockwave of his arrival ripping through the battlefield and crushing loyalist and traitor alike beneath indiscriminate ruin. With the black blade howling in his grip, Angron carved a path through Imperial defenders, a living catastrophe, hacking his way towards the walls of the Imperial Palace. There he beheld Sanguinius, the radiant angel of the Blood Angels, and hurled a challenge thick with spite and longing. Sanguinius answered with the only warrior's salute and refusal, turning away to withdraw behind the Imperial Palace walls. He told Angron their fates would clash one day, but not this day. Angron's answer was a scream of pure frustration. The Emperor's lingering psychic Kajia still burned his essence, denying him pursuit, denying him the kill. The palace remained just beyond his reach, a wound he could not tear open. As the siege ground on at the Battle of the Lion's Gate spaceport, Angron smashed a Capital Imperialis to scrap and tore apart a Leviathan transport, yet still he could not break through the Imperial Palace's defenses. Only when the traitors unleashed a final overwhelming assault did the spaceport fall. As the Emperor's barrier shrank back to the Sanctum Imperialis, Angron led a tide of blood-drunk world eaters onto the Eternity Wall, drowning its defenders in slaughter and rage, howling defiance at the world that he had never stopped denying him.
Yeah, all right. We're there, the Imperial Palace. Freshly swollen with demonic power, Angron and his world eaters smashed aside the loyalist defenders, clinging to the Eternity Wall. It fell to them, by fate or by curse, to spearhead the final headlong assault on the Imperial Palace itself. Fragmentary siege-picked feeds still showed the moment, the walls rupturing under a relentless assault, world eaters pouring through the breach, and at their forefront, the warped crimson tide of Angron, his rune-lit blade blazing as he carved a path into the heart of the palace. Khorne was among the first to cross the shattered threshold. Though the sons of Horus would later dispute it, the 12th Legion's own chronicles are clear that the fall of the Palace Gate was wrought by Angron's demonic black blade, driven into adamantium and all the hatred of a lifetime of chains and betrayal. Terra drowned in the blood beneath World Eater's advance, yet even that harvest was denied its final reward. With the Dark Angels and Space Wolves racing toward Terra to reinforce the Loyalists, Horus staked everything on a single desperate gamble. He dropped the void shields of the vengeful spirit and challenged the Emperor to face him, daring God to meet Son. The Master of Mankind answered. Their duel decided the fate of the galaxy, a clash of flesh and warp that ended only when the Emperor destroyed Horus utterly, erasing even his soul, but at the price of his own mortality and eternal imprisonment on the Golden Throne. With Horus dead, the traitor host shattered and fled Terra. Angron was the last to depart, standing upon the deck of his dropship, staring back at the Imperial Palace with a yearning snarl. It had endured him. Even now, even as a god of slaughter, it had denied him. We unfortunately skipped over. I think we're not going over the duel with Sani.
Yeah, I forgot about that, but yeah, no. If we know about it, let's talk about that, because he does get that duel that Sanguinius says, "Hold on, we'll fight one day." That day does come. How does that happen? Even has anyone read that part of the book?
I haven't got there yet. I'm way behind that.
You don't bend a guy's arm, but go read 100 books right now, James. Get after
you know what? I legitimately have, with some of the help of you, Mark, been able to collect most of the series all the way up to the Scouring. I have the first book of the Scouring, and I'm going through it. I'm making my way downtown. It's a long road though.
Nice. AI says, just real quick on Sanguinius, and
you're actually supposed to read the
Angron.
books in reverse, James. So you have to start with all the 40k stuff and then work your way back down through the Scouring and then the Heresy.
Yeah, that's too many books. I'm not doing that.
The fight between Sanguinius and Angron is a legendary class of angel versus demon, light versus rage, often depicted at the Eternity Gate during the Siege of Terror, where Sanguinius, using his angelic speed and precognition, ultimately defeats the demon Angron by exploiting his butchered nails to rip them out, momentarily freeing Angron from chaos, but leaving Sanguinius weakened before his fated duel with Horus. It attests, and then it just fluffs up Sanguinius there for a little bit.
Hey, Sanguinius gets all the fluffy ones.
Yeah, okay. Well, if he does, it is a testament to Sanguinius's power and sacrifice, showcasing his ability to overcome even the most berserk brothers, though it cost him dearly. Yeah, so right in front of the Imperial Palace at the Eternity Gate, these two fight. And that'd be such a cool battle to witness. Like, they're both flying, and like that's an element that none of the other Primarchs really have in the same way.
Well, I think the thing I like about that duel is the way that Sanguinius is the reverse of what Angron is. Like they're the reverses of each other. Like where Angron is bitter and resentful, Sanguinius is loyal and optimistic. Like Sanguinius is, in my opinion, the best of the Primarchs because he takes flaws and makes them good, or he takes what things are and makes them positive. Like Rabuti Gildaman is more like an efficiency guy. He's like, he does have noble virtues, but they're almost intrinsic to him, if that makes sense. He already is noble. He already is good. He doesn't necessarily bring that out as much. Whereas Sanguinius is like, it's more of like the bringing good out of bad, which is more noble in my estimation. Whereas Angron is, he's in a bad spot, but he makes it worse. And so I think that they're interesting parallel, or like not parallel, but like different
foils.
Yeah, they're foils in a good way.
Yeah. The other thing too is the obvious imagery of the angel and the demon too, which is really cool. You know, Archangel Michael and Satan kind of like grappling is often like a motif in like paintings and things and sculptures. So and Sanguinius has that imagery too when he fights Kabanda at the Eternity Gate as well. But same idea. Like Angron, when he looks like in his demon form, looks very much like what do you call them? Bloodthirster. So you saw that like parallel imagery.
Because Mark, you have some of the models up here. There's two versions, or a few versions. Like there's the Angron early on, and then there's the Angron as a demon, and then there's the Angron fully as a demon. I think there's like a transformation. Like it's not instantly that he becomes a demon and he's fully the
Angron of 40.
Yeah, there's a time.
I don't know. That's one way to read it. I never thought of it that way. I always thought that it was just like a different sculpture. Like I didn't know if there was any seriousness behind the differences other than like it was just a different sculptor. I could be wrong though. I thought there was like a trend, like because I remember reading about how they wanted to depict the move towards chaos in the models, Yeah.
Because like that's why like there's a difference between Horus and Horus Ascended, right? There's a transformation taking place.
I don't know if the same holds true for someone like what's his name, Fulgrim. Again, I don't dislike what you're saying. I'm just saying I don't know if that was always. I don't know if that was the intention behind it, but I could definitely see it. Like one is more. You see, Angron's more human features in his 30K Ascended version versus the 40K version.
Well, there is like in Fulgrim's model, there's the Fulgrim where he has like a normal human body, and then there's the one where now maybe that's just before the drop site massacre and after. I'm not sure how that exactly plays out, but I'm pretty sure that the demon form is a later evolution of his fall, right? But I like the visual of it either way, whether it was intended or not. It looks that way.
Yeah, certainly. Like you could retroactively explain it that way, and the differences of why they look so different. I have in the past stated my criticisms for the new Forge World version. I thought he's too spindly and thin, but with your explanation, I could forgive those things. I do really like his 40K version, and I think he was one of the first current Primarchs that was depicted in artwork before the models dropped. There was an old White Dwarf where you saw Angron's face. I think they were talking about him in Armageddon, and I remember a White Dwarf article that had an image of Demon Angron, and they carried that same aesthetic. Oftentimes, that picture. Oftentimes they will change like their original concept art to when they depict them in model form or in like later art, but they did actually pretty I think they did a pretty good job of replicating and sticking to this form for his 40K demon form.
That one is like, that art is so like it is genuinely like horrifying looking. Like it looks like a skull almost in the way they've done it here, because it has like a little bit of an under accentuated nose. Yeah, it's
like it's just tight. Yeah, tight skin.
Yeah,
the
100%.
model is less that way.
Yeah, but it's pretty close. Like it's a pretty good approximation, I think.
Oh yeah, it's well done. Yeah.
Do you have that model, Jim?
I do. It was not a big competition, but I won a painting competition with my version of it. I was quite proud of it.
Very cool.
Nice. All right, let's move the timeline along into the Great Scouring. He drove what remained of the World Eaters into the howling refuge of the Eye of Terror, the vast bleeding wound in the galaxy's northwestern reaches. There, amid warpfire and madness, Angron and his heretic Astartes gained an eternity to nurse their hatred and persecute vengeance in the long war against the Corpse Emperor and all who still served his withered dream. With the Horus Heresy spent, the 12th Legion vanished into the Eye, retreating to a demon world fashioned for Angron by Khorne himself. Yet the Legion did not endure as one. Under the ceaseless, blood-hungry goad of their god, the World Eaters fractured, splintering into feral warbands that turned upon one another as readily as upon their foes, until brotherhood was reduced to nothing but shared slaughter. Again, you see, this is why I say like brotherhood and stuff, and like you obviously have Angron with his relationship with his former gladiators and that kind of sense of brotherhood, but that's often like a thing that keeps breaking within the World Eaters, is this like shattered brotherhood. They're killing each other. I read somewhere, I don't know, I can't remember where I read or heard of this, about like when brothers hate each other, it's almost like worse than hating a stranger. Like there's a deeper level of hatred when it was someone that was close to you. And you can definitely see that within the World Eaters. Just they're becoming the antithesis of what they were supposed to be, what their noble form ought to have been. And then that same paternal relationship with their Primarch is also shattered as well. So it remains even now. The World Eaters claim no fixed realm, no single bastion, each warband ranging from whatever starship they have seized and stained red with conquest. Angron's manifestations in the Imperium have been mercifully rare in the millennia since the heresy, for the Red Angel is ever occupied, either waging Khorne's endless wars against rival powers of chaos or reigning over his own demon world. a kingdom built on screams and bone. Even so, the Imperium's records attest to several grim moments since the Age of Betrayal, when Angron himself has crossed the veil, leading the Blood God's hosts in person and reminding humanity that his rage is not cooled, nor his tragedy found any end. A million worlds, a billion battlefields, a trillion foes. Angron, demon Primarch of the World Eaters.
Yeah, this is one thing I've always liked about Angron is like he's come back into the galaxy a bunch of times. Like before modern 40K, like we had him at the first war for Armageddon. We have him at a bunch of different time spots throughout 40K's timelines. That's always been cool. And like you said, there's that White Dwarf where that artwork came from. Like he had rules once upon a time in Apocalypse. When Apocalypse 6th edition came out, he was like an 888 point model. And this was his artwork for him. But that was always very cool that like he was a thing before he had a model, kind of before the return of the Primarchs. He's kind of been doing his raging.
One of the things I'm not a fan of is that coming back every 8 months, 8 weeks, 8 days.
On the 8th hour of the 8th day. Yeah.
Because it always bugged me. It's like 8 days is just another week. So it's nine weeks. That all screws it all up. And you're like,
James is really bad at summoning demons.
Keeps doing the math wrong. Fuck.
It's demon math, James. It doesn't need to make sense.
Demon math. I have to get that right.
So that's where we leave kind of Angron in the timeline of it all. We'll learn maybe a little bit more about him during the next couple episodes with the World Eaters, just because, yeah, he does come back a couple times. So unlike the other ones, he kind of pops up. But yeah, let's kind of wrap up this episode with some personality, appearance, powers, and a couple other small things like war gear.
So during the Great Crusade, Angron's personality was defined by barely restrained fury, layered over a profound unhealed grief beneath the nail's constant agony. There still existed a bitter clarity. He despised tyranny, pitied the enslaved, and loathed hollow victories won in the name of distant ideals. He fought because violence was the only language left to him, not because he believed in the Imperium's dream. Though outwardly brutal, his rage was still tethered to memory of his falling gladiator brothers and sisters, of the life and death stolen from him on Nuceria. At times, this gave his wrath a grim purpose, even a twisted honor. He hated weakness, but he hated hypocrisy more, and his resentment towards the Emperor simmered rather than consumed him. Angron was broken, but not yet entirely lost. During the Horus Heresy, the fragile balance collapsed, and Angron's personality accelerated towards ruin. The nails bit deeper, eroding thought, patience, and restraint, turning every emotion into raw violence. What had once been anger sharpened by memory became a constant howling need for blood, each battle feeding in the next in a vicious spiral. Horus's rebellion did not create this change, it unleashed it, removing the last chains of obligation that had held Angron back. Betrayal hardened into certainty, pain into identity, as chaos took hold and the blood god claimed him. Angron ceased to be a warrior driven by loss and became loss made manifest, a living engine of slaughter. By the end of the heresy, there was no separation between his will and his fury. The tragedy of Angron was complete, as the last echoes of who he had been were drowned beneath endless war.
Kind of to James's point, I know we've kind of been harping on this throughout the whole episode, but I was kind of thinking about like a good example of this. Oftentimes people in real life, if they get dealt a bad hand, they can choose what they do with the cards that they're dealt, obviously. And so let's say you have an example of a father who, terrible life, horrible upbringing, but he chooses to drink and beat his kids and perpetuate violence. There's a point in that path where like he's choosing that versus someone who's also dealt a horrible hand but chooses not to do that. And then like I was thinking of the butcher's nails as something like alcohol or a vice or something. in addition to it. So oftentimes you can go the route of like, oh, it's not my fault. It's only the alcohol that causes me to get violent, right? Well, yeah, but there's also choices wrapped in with that drinking. And sure, the drinking, maybe you become that violent monster after you drink, but there are a bunch of choices also mixed in with that, and the choosing to how you deal with your problems that is manifesting as you're drinking and as your violent expressions. So just kind of like humanizing the idea. It's harder to like, relate to a Primarch with this machine embedded in his skull, but we have very similar parallels. And like I was saying with the whole thing about brotherhood and like father-son dynamic too amongst the world leaders, like that is I think a very poignant example of like exactly that. Angron is an alcoholic father.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm trying to say
at it like a vice, like that vice where it even says where the more he does violence, it's like it self-perpetuates that he needs to do more, and it's just that vicious circle.
People often talk about like feeding a vice in the same way you feed the butcher's nails, right? Like same kind of, to wrap it all up together. So
yeah, like I said, this is one of the most, I think, well-written Primarch stories, for that reason of just how much depth it feels like it has. Like you compare that to Fulgrim and his descent to chaos, it feels so shallow in comparison.
I'm a big Fulgrim stan, so
you're big Fulgrim.
Fulgrim stan.
I don't know if I totally agree, but continue.
Yeah, we can fight about that later, Jordan. I'm willing to fight you.
It's just James never achieved perfection in anything, so he doesn't know that vice very well. He gets the Angron vice, but not the perfection one.
Yeah, the rage speaks loud to me.
Yeah. We got a little section on his appearance. Honestly, just pop your phone down at your screen. You'll look at all this sweet artwork of Angron. There's a bunch of official stuff. There's a bunch of non-official stuff. But yeah, honestly, this is one of the best artworks of all of 40K. This like old white dwarf Angron artwork. Like just brutal.
It's not the image behind me. What are you saying, Mark?
I said one of the greats, Jordan, not the great. Yeah, man. So we'll skip that portion and go into kind of his powers and abilities because, he becomes a Daemon Prince. So that kind of opens up new things for him. Yeah,
so Khorne, in the days when he still bore the rank of captain of the 8th Assault Company of the Warhounds, was forever marked by his first sight of the Primarch's face, a memory that echoed across the ages like a wound that never closed. Wiry, coppery red hair curled away from a high brow, pale eyes set deep behind cheekbones that angled down like axe strokes to an aquiline nose, and a broad, thin-lipped mouth. It was the face of a general to follow on to death, the face of a teacher at whose feet the wise would fight to sit, the face of a king made for the adoration of worlds, the face of a Primarch. And rage made it the face of a beast. Rage pulsed and distorted the features like a tumor breaking out from the skull beneath. It made the eyes into yellow, empty pits, debased the proud lines of brow and jaw, peeled the lips back from the teeth. By the brutal traditions of the Nucerian arenas that had forged him, Angron carved scars into his own flesh after every battle, a living record etched across his torso, known as a triumph rope. Each victory was allowed to heal clean and pale, but each defeat demanded filth be ground into the wound so the scar would blacken forever. In all the blood-soaked history of Nucerian gladiatorial pits, Angron alone bore no blackened scars. Corvus Corax believed that among all the Primarchs, only Horus and perhaps Sanguinius might have overcome Angron in single combat. Leman Russ was often judged Angron's equal in raw physical violence. Rogel Dorn, however, believed he could destroy Angron through discipline and strategy and feared him far less than he feared Horus, whose mind was a weapon as sharp as any blade. Before the butcher's nails were driven into his skull, Angron possessed a rare physique, or psychic sensitivity, an instinctive empathy that allowed him to not merely to feel the pain and despair of others, but to draw it into himself.
Go.
In the darkness of Nucerian slave caves, before he was dragged in chains to Daesha, he used his gift to soothe the terror and agony of the other children slaves, taking their suffering into his own soul long before the galaxy decided he would drown in it. After his ascension, Angron was no longer merely a Primarch consumed by rage, but a living avatar of Khorne's wrath, a walking catastrophe of flesh, fire, and demonic power. His already godlike strength swelled to impossible extremes, allowing him to tear apart titans, pulverize fortress walls, and butcher entire companies of space marines with contemptuous ease. Bound to the warp, Angron could no longer truly die. When his corporeal form was destroyed, his essence was dragged screaming back into the Imperium, only to be unleashed again when the Blood God willed it. His presence alone ignited berserk fury in the mortals and Astartes alike, driving warriors into homicidal madness as the echo of the butcher's nails was magnified 1,000-fold through the warp. Wreathed in a demonic fire, armed with weapons forged in hell forges, and sustained by endless slaughter, Angron became the perfect engine of an eternal war. Tragically powerful, utterly enslaved, and forever denied the peace that death once promised him.
Christian, a few days ago, you're like, oh yeah, let me on the Angron episode. I got some things to rage about. I'm like, yeah, I got some things to rage about too there, buddy. This was one of them, this whole little empathy update that they did. They're like, he feels everything so deeply. It's pretty fucking dumb. I think it's so silly. It's one of those things where it's like they just tried to add too much onto him. And that was the final straw of just like, come on, we don't need him to feel the people that he's killing. Like, it's already tragic. It's already pitiful. It's already all these things that we discussed. And I think that was just one of those weird things.
I wonder if that is like an overcompensation on the author's part. I think it's for the shallow readers who are like, her Angron angry, what a shallow and no story there. And through this whole episode, I think we've created a pretty strong argument that that's not the case. But for the shallow readers, it's like, oh yeah, we need to really layer some extra things on there because we don't understand our own character. Is my feelings towards that. That being said, I will say that oftentimes the over empathetic feeling types often also express feelings through rage as well, just as a real life observation. So I don't think it's necessary. I think it kind of like, again, is laying it on thick. But at the same time, I think in real life can see some parallels where, you know, those who feel rather than think often also express only in rage and anger rather than through other more constructive routes.
Yeah, like thankfully it's not something that breaks the character. It's so small and you pretty much only get it on his time in New Syria before he gets the nail. So he kind of has this empathy power for such a brief period and then it kind of just goes away. Yeah. So not the most grievous offenses, but still just whatever.
Yeah, and I will also add it does support my brotherhood thing of like, yeah, he's quite like, again, like a good version of Angron, as in good in the sense of like noble and positive would be sure, like if it's empathy and like that feeling of brotherhood of creating that, being able to create that amongst others. Like imagine a good Angron amongst, maybe he was a missing link, like all the Primarchs suffer from this like fractured fraternity. Maybe a good Angron would have gelled all the Primarchs together and kind of held or brought this like overall feeling of brotherhood amongst the whole group, right? Like that seems to be what he's able to do amongst the gladiators.
Can I make a defense for it a little bit? Because I don't think it's that bad. In fact, I think it might add a little bit to him. The reason for that being that his main thing is bitterness, but if he feels the pain of the people he's going through all this suffering with, it would maybe give him more motivation to be bitter. Or again, he'd have a decision to say, I want to remove the pain from these people, and that's something to drive hopefully
by removing
towards
their head.
Well, no, but like if he can feel the pain, if he can take the suffering away of people nearby him in a positive way, he made a choice not to make that his character, right? And so it's another point of
he could have been working for the Canadian government MAID program, just offing Canadians left and right, but no,
it doesn't say it doesn't. From what we're read here, and again, I hadn't heard about this before our meeting notes, but if you took away the terror and agony of the child slaves, he theoretically could have been using this as a positive thing to be like helping those around him get through difficulty. but he chose not to make that something that he used a lot. So maybe it's another element of his bitterness, and he's like, well, if I'm going to suffer, you're going to suffer. I don't know. I don't think it's a bad element to add. I don't think it necessarily adds a lot, because all the elements are already there for all the things that it adds, but I don't think it's bad. I think it contributes.
I get salty often, like when it's like I know the character, I know his key features and abilities, and for 20 years I got used to something, and then they toss in like a throwaway line like that. But it's gonna keep me up, but whatever.
It's not the worst offense, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessary or improves a character. I'm really just retroactively trying to justify what's already been done, which I should stop doing.
Cool.
All right. Well, let's get into some of his war gear. During the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, Angron butchered his enemies with the twin chain axes Gorechild and Gorefather. Again, that paternal link. Weapons that screamed as loudly as their master's soul. Before these, he bore the crude chain axe Widowmaker, a brutal tool of simpler hatred, shattered in his clash with Leman Russ during the Night of the Wolf. To replace the broken relic, Angron seized the colossal axe Brazen Tooth, a weapon fit only for ruin, later cast aside and gifted to the word-bearers as a blood-soaked symbol of their doomed pact. For defense, Angron encased his scarred body in a vast suit of power armor forged from the design of his Nucerian gladiator warplate. The armor of Mars, a prison as much as a protection. He also carried the plasma pistol Spite Furnace, a snarling echo of his wrath. After his ascension to demonhood, Angron abandoned these mortal tools, forsaking steel and ceramite for the Black Blade, a demonic weapon of pure slaughter, bound eternally in his rage and his curse. I do like that Angron goes through so many different weapons. It makes sense in reality for any warrior, but especially for him being like a gladiator archetype, that he just kind of uses weapons as tools and then moves on to the next ones. The whole like myth around like weapons.
You have a named sword and it's been passed down 7 generations. It's like
that sword wasn't used very often because swords were tools, and tools get broken when they get used a lot.
Yeah.
So that
like
that
even
is like
hammers,
kind of
man. Even hammers. You use a hammer, you're gonna break that bitch. Like, and it's meant for smash and shit. Like
exactly right. Like you know, armor that's not beaten up, and I don't know, something poetic about not seeing combat.
something poetic. Fuck.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the Black Blade. Primarch Angron's personal rune sword, this gigantic black sword engraved with blasphemous runes, could cleave anything in two. The weapon was forged by the Dark Mechanicum shortly after Angron's ascension to demonhood, during the Shadow Crusade. Wielded by Angron in the First War for Armageddon, the weapon was powerful enough to instantly annihilate 5 Grey Knight Terminators in a single stroke.
The Black Blade does not make it to his 40k model. He picks up a different thing and a different chain axe, Spine Chewer, or something like that.
Really? I am shocked. I thought he would have had it. Is it a weapon option on the model, James, or no?
There's no options for his weapons. He has a sword and he has a chain axe.
It's not the sword?
I didn't know why it wouldn't have been the sword. I didn't know that he didn't get the same one.
Yeah, the new sword is called, I'll look it up.
It's so funny whenever they put so much emphasis on a weapon and then they just...
Yeah, like the Black Blade was like famous, man. But yeah, the new sword is called Samanarius, and his chain axe is called Spine Grinder.
Huh. Curious.
They look
so we don't even have
similar to it, and that's like the other weird thing where it's like, okay, so did somebody not know that his sword was named and then they named it? Like, because it looks very similar to the Black Blade.
100% that's what happened. Does his old 30k model have one, or like his demon form?
No, because he wasn't given that till like after, wasn't it? Didn't it say after the heresy, or was it just after his ascension?
I thought it was his ascension, but I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like that sword obviously is different than his current sword. So then what sword is that? There it is. That's black.
That's the black. Yeah. Okay, we'll pull up one more link here to see if we can get a picture of specifically the Black Blade. Wait, the Black Blade, it's called here. Now we know GW's up. Oh, it always is the Black Blade, not the Black Sword. Never mind. Yeah, so there's artwork. It looks pretty well the dang same as any sword. You know, there's two sharp sides on this pointy end.
There's a hilt. Yeah.
Yes, Jordan, there is a hilt. Correct.
A pommel somewhere in there, I'm sure.
Sure.
All right, should we land this plane here, and we'll kind of explore the relationships with the other Primarchs. Among the traitor Primarchs, Angron's relationships were defined by violence, utility, and barely restrained contempt. He had little patience for schemes, prophecy, or ideology, and viewed many of his fellow rebels as liars playing at war. Lorgar was the exception and the wound, both savior and jailer in Angron's eyes. It was Lorgar who preserved Angron's life through damnation, dragging him into demonhood and binding him eternally to Khorne, an act Angron neither forgave nor forgot. With Horus, Angron shared no true brotherhood, only a mutual alignment of hatred towards the Emperor. Horus was a means to an end, not a leader he respected. Perturabo earned Angron's grudging acknowledgement through endurance and unyielding will, though their bond was forged in rivalry and blood rather than trust. To Angron, the traitor Primarchs were not comrades but fellow monsters, tolerated only so long as they led him toward battle and slaughter. Angron's relationship with the loyalist Primarchs was far simpler. It was one of unrelenting hostility, sharpened by envy, bitterness, and pain. He despised them as favored sons, men who had been granted legion worlds and loyalty without having to bleed for every breath. The Emperor's failure to save Angron's gladiator kin poisoned his view of all his brothers, but none more so than those who embodied nobility and restraint. Guilliman represented everything Angron hated: order, control, and moral certainty, making their clashes bitter and personal. Sanguinius, the true angel, was a living insult, a reflection of what Angron might have been without the nails, and thus a source of deep, unspoken loathing. Even Leman Russ, sent to chastise him, became another reminder that Angron was not trusted, not saved, only feared and restrained. To Angron, the loyalists were not brothers to be reconciled with, but symbols of a stolen life, and every blow struck against them was an attempt to avenge a past that could never be undone. Quote, "You're still alive, Angron, enslaved by your past, blind to the future, too hateful to learn, and too spiteful to prosper." End quote. Lorgar, Primarch of the Word Bearers.
Truer words never spoken. I really love that. I think it could apply to a lot of people. I'm going to start throwing in that people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good quote, yeah.
Enslaved by your past, blind to your future. Fun. So do we all have amendments to make with people, make amends and stuff? Do we be better people after this episode? What are you spiteful and holding on to that you just need to let go of?
No, I choose my nails. Take me, Khorne.
Oh boy.
That's the only lesson I learned in this episode.
Good. I think that's what you should take away from it, honestly. If you are a World Eaters Angron fan, that is the lesson.
Absolutely.
Can I wrap up a weird question based on kind of how the discussion of this episode went? The way we talked about this is basically the character degeneration and the ultimate damnation of the Primarch. Would you think, is it possible that there would be a good story, regardless of whether it really works well in the lore, but a good story out of a redemption arc for a Primarch? As in one that failed or was cursed to become a demon Primarch and somehow finding a way of saving them and then they become good in some way? Or is that would that break too much in your mind?
I don't coming back from a demon Primarch, that seems
impossible.
Yeah, impossible. I don't know. Within the rules of the story.
I think this came up a long time ago, actually, on the podcast. I can't remember with who or what context, about whether, like, what are the limits of redemption in 40k. Yeah, I think just the mechanics of how the warp works, like, I don't know that there's ever been a precedent for anything that is warp being redeemed, like warp made being redeemed. Like, there are no demons that are turned into anything productive. There's nothing from the warp that is ever made anything productive, except my only thing would be whatever Wraithbone, but that's not really like the demonic corruptive element of the warp. That's like a calm version of the warp that's spun into physical.
Harvesting actual energy.
Yeah, so
right. Again, I know that they're probably like, they're never gonna do it because like any demon Primarch's gonna have a demon legion, and they're never gonna, like, I know this it'll never happen. But would it be a good story?
Might, maybe, man. I keep hearing rumblings always about, you know, one Primarch will flip and one will redeem himself. I've heard that for many years, the rumblings. I could see it happening, and it wouldn't catch me off guard, honestly.
Would you hate it?
If it was one of the 4 demon ones, I would hate it. If it was, you know, maybe one of the other ones, I could get behind it, like me personally. But when I look in universe, redemption isn't possible in universe, not because, like, yeah, the warp might not let you, but the Imperium will not let you. Like, there is no redemption. They will not side with you. There's no forgiveness. Like, these are all like mantras that you go to sleep saying, you know.
And then the line comes along and redeems the fallen, though. So that's a whole.
But could one of them could one of them, like, sort of escape?
I wanted to agree with you.
Escape the powers of chaos and the Imperium and kind of live a hermit existence to try and redeem themselves, you know?
And Grunge becomes just a simple farmer, eh? He's the start of the farmer's life.
No, even with his
he
legion,
is the farmer's wife.
like, he could go with his legion on, like, a planet. Which
are the ones that aren't demons? Which are the ones, like, Lorgar's not going to change?
I think they're all.
Lorgar becomes a demon prince. Yeah.
Oh, is he a demon also?
They're all demon princes, even the ones that aren't supposed to be. Like, in theory, Perturabo shouldn't have become a demon prince, and he would be one that could theoretically be flipped. Cruz is allegedly dead unless he's not dead, and they pull a switcheroo and he redeems himself.
Cruz,
I will say,
will be redeemed.
Cruz would be one that would make sense, like,
revived,
be
and
more reasonable.
Yeah, I will say the closest to, like, warp redemption, there's this undercurrent, especially in the later Horus Heresy novels, both with the Emperor. There's a little bit with Sanguinius and with Horus, where there's almost these, like, demonic alter egos of them that exist in the warp that they're constantly fighting off or staving off. There's, like, the Red Angel that haunts Sanguinius. The Emperor has this demon form that tries to birth itself out of him, the Dark Prince. So they play with this element. It never goes full-blown redemption, but it's almost like the closest they've come to the idea of redemption. So in theory, if they ever capitalized on those, and those aren't, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the way those elements have been played with. I think they're very poorly done. But that being said, I think that would be the closest, where, like, this demonic force almost overtakes one of the noble characters, but they fight it off at the end and they stave it off, and their true glorious self kind of, like, breaks through their demonic shadow. And it happens actually quite a few times with a couple of different characters, especially the more noble ones like the Emperor himself and Sanguinius, if you consider the Emperor noble anyways. That being said, it would be a world shattering change, but it could be well done. I wouldn't hate it. You might actually accidentally tip the status quo in such a way that you'd have to almost end 40k. But it could also would be a reason not to do it. But it could be kind of like a final revelation or like apocalypse moment, like an idea of forgiveness or redemption being the thing that kind of solves all the ills of both the Imperium and the warp and everything. But it would be a like crazy undertaking to do it in a way that doesn't break everything and also kind of come off as overly cheesy. I think it's doable. I just don't know how it could be done.
I think it'd be cool. I don't know how you would do it either, but I always like my favorite kinds of stories are always character degeneration paired with character regeneration. I think it's one of the stronger stories to do. That's one of the reasons that Breaking Bad was such a good show, was because of the pairing of a degeneration with a regeneration.
Darth Vader is a good big one too.
Yeah.
I've always said on the podcast even that the Fallen Paladin has always been my favorite kind of story arc, but some of them don't end with a positive outcome. Someone like Arthas from World of Warcraft is an example of that not going to plan, but
yeah, cool. Thanks for indulging.
Yeah, fun little thought for sure. I can't wait till we're done. Like I got like a list of episodes I want to do when we're done all the Primarchs. And we have all the information. I got a bunch of crazy kind of like what ifs and all this. Like, yeah, that's a good one I'm gonna add to it. And which ones should flip? Which ones should come back? You know, is it just Alfarius? Maybe, hard to say. But well, everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Lorehammer. It was a long one, but man, a lot of fun. Learned a lot. I think my takeaway was the change from tragic to pitiful. You know, it's one of those things. Maybe he was tragic back in the day, like when we didn't have as much knowledge on him. But now that we have all this knowledge, yeah, it's a pitiful character. He has choices. He's got many chances, and he always chooses the wrong path. He chooses bitterness every time. So, fuck him. Fuck chaos. Long live the Emperor, I guess.
You bootlickers.
You filthy bootlickers. You guys got any closing thoughts there?
No, Angron is up there for me. He's always been one of my favorites, along with Fulgrim. And I do like the deeper. He's deeper than he comes off on the surface. So I encourage anyone who wasn't interested in Angron or the World Eaters to give them a second go.
Yeah, he's good. I find him. I've always found his like Khorne to be a little shallow, but Angron being like a I don't know Khorne inspired does have a few more layers to his onion.
Listen, I've always had the opinion that the Chaos army you choose to play is a reflection of your character. And I'm talking to all you Slanesh and Emperor's Children people. And World Eaters, like I legitimately, like sometimes like a vice of mine tends to be like being angry and rage sometimes. And I can see like maybe that is why like I have a World Eaters army. I love their aesthetic and everything. And I think there is some truth to that the Chaos army you choose is maybe like there's something to it. It is personal to who you are in some way, and so I wonder how much that plays out. And I think the World Eaters have some interesting things to wrestle with as you look at them.
Yeah, I have Black Legion, Death Guard, and World Eater. So Sloth, Wrath, and whatever Black Legion represents.
Everything, Christian. The mastery of it all. Oh, great. Well, cool. Come check out Lorehammer Listen to Lore podcast if you want to listen to homebrew lore that listeners have written out. Lots of episodes out there. Come check it out. Lorehammer Listen to Lore.
And if you like Star Wars, come check out the Star Lores podcast. With me and Jordan, I beat you to it.
Well, I was waiting for you, and then you didn't say anything.
I was waiting for you, and you didn't say nothing.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, come check out our podcast. We're having a blast doing it. Format's a little different than Warhammer, but we like to have fun over there too. So definitely check us out.
Yeah, and if you have any complaints about this episode or any other, send them to jamescomplaints@gmail.com. We won't read them, and we don't care what you say.
Nope. But it's a good place to start making lists of people. You know, I like making lists, and that's a great spot to start gathering names. So send it in, jamescomplaints@gmail.com. And
if the FBI can have a list, I can have a list too.
Exactly. All right, we'll see you all in the next episode. Adios.